Hello, everybody. I am Ariana King. I'm one of the marketing coordinators here at Meetup. Welcome to another Meetup Live event. Today, we're joined by special guest, Camille Wilson, creator of the Cocktail Snob and author of Free Spirit Cocktails. Camille's going to walk us through the basics of mixology, teach us how to make 3 holiday cocktails, and share some techniques for customizing cocktails to fit your tastes. Impress your friends with a happy hour at home this holiday season. We're going to run through some guidelines really quickly, just so everybody knows this event will be recorded, but your video and audio is muted, so you will not be seen or heard. We would love to answer any questions you have about making fantastic drinks, so drop those in the Q&A section below. Closed captioning is available. To turn it on, click on the live transcription icon at the bottom of your screen and select your preference. Today, we'll have an introduction that we're running through right now. Then Camille will do a 45-minute cocktail demo, and then we'll have a Q&A session to get all of your questions answered, or as many as we can do in 10 minutes. Alrighty, and now I'm going to turn it over to our guest, Camille Wilson, to introduce herself and teach us a thing or two about cocktails. Camille, on to you.
Thank you so much, Ariana. Hi, everyone. It is so nice to see so many people from all over the world tuning in to learn how to make holiday cocktails. My name is Camille Wilson. I'm a New York City-based cocktail creator, content creator, and cocktail blogger. I started my blog, The Cocktail Snob, about 4 years ago because I always heard of this misconception that you need a lot of fancy tools and expensive ingredients to make cocktails at home. And really, that's not the case. So my whole mission has been to show people how you can make really great restaurant quality drinks at home with the ingredients that you already have in your pantry and your fridge. So we're going to be doing that together today. I hope you are following along. I hope you're going to make all the drinks. It's going to be a great time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So our first drink is actually an old fashioned. So if you're not familiar, an old fashioned is a 3-ingredient cocktail that tends to be really strong, but I really like it. We're doing actually kind of like a riff on a classic with this old fashioned, because instead of simple syrup, we are going to use honey. If you don't want to use honey, you're not a fan, you can also use agave. You can use simple syrup. That's what the actual original recipe calls for. So it's really up to you, but we're going to make a honey syrup together. In addition to that, you're going to need warm water to complete the syrup, whiskey, which is the main ingredient, and then aromatic bitters. So hopefully you are joining me and making these cocktails with me. But if not, the recipes are going to be available to you later if you want to make them at another time. So let's get started with our honey old fashioned. One thing I always like to remind people when we're doing sort of like mixology is that it's really important to actually measure what you're pouring into your glass. So typically bartenders use a tool like this, which is called a jigger. Sometimes they have a handle on them. Some of them have different shapes. But it's really important to measure what you're mixing, because a balanced cocktail is really what's going to taste best. So if you don't have a jigger, I actually will help you convert to like tablespoons if that's helpful. But you definitely just want to measure so that way your cocktail can be balanced and actually taste good. So you're not just tasting the whiskey or the vodka, you're kind of getting everything all together. Another thing that is really important when it comes to cocktail making is actual mixing. So there are 2 ways that cocktails get mixed. So the first is stirring. So some cocktails are stirred, like our old fashioned is going to be stirred. Some cocktails are shaken in a cocktail shaker. So we're going to do a little bit of both today. I love shaking. It's such like a fun activity. We're going to do a little bit of both, but regardless of how you mix your cocktail, the most important component is ice. So whether you stir, whether you shake, ice is like the #1 thing that you need, because a chilled cocktail is going to taste best. And the last thing I always like to remind people when we're making drinks is make something that you like. So some of the cocktails that we're making today are sort of like classic ones. Some are ones that I've created. Some are ones that I've borrowed from other recipe creators. But the most important thing is that you make something you like, so I can help you figure out ways to sort of tweak things. If it's too strong, if it's too sweet, too tart, I will kind of help you along the way so that you can customize the drink to your liking. So I always like to mention those three things: make something you like, talking about how you can mix, and talking about the importance of measuring before we actually go into any cocktail making. So with that, we're actually going to get started on our old fashioned. So the old fashioned is a drink that we're going to make in the glass. But the first thing we're going to do is actually make the honey syrup. So honey syrup is really easy. It's just 1 part honey and 1 part warm water. And it's up to you how much honey syrup you want to make. I will say, if you're making the other cocktail after this, it makes sense to make like a decent sized batch. So we're going to use the honey syrup for this cocktail and the second cocktail. So like I said, it's just equal parts water and honey. So I'm going to actually make 1/4 of a cup of honey syrup. So what I'll do is I'm going to grab my warm water, and I have my measuring spoon right here. And I'm just going to pour 1/4 of a cup of warm water into like a mixing bowl or a measuring cup, whatever you prefer, totally fine. So I have 1/4 of a cup of warm water. And then I'm just gonna do the same thing with the honey. I'm gonna measure out 1/4 of a cup of honey and add it to the same mixing bowl. So again, you just wanna do equal parts. I would recommend doing about 1/4 cup. So 1/4 cup of warm water and 1/4 cup of honey. And then we're just gonna whisk it or stir it together until it combines. And the reason that we do that is because if you use honey on its own, without any like warm water in it, it's just really sticky and it doesn't really blend well with the other ingredients in the drink. So you just mix it with the warm water in order to make it a little bit thinner and make it easier to combine later. So this is something that you can actually, this is a sweetener that you can actually use in other drinks as well, not just cocktails. You can also use it in your tea, in your coffee, whatever drink you're making, even in lemonade, things like that. All right, so this is what our honey syrup should look like. And we're gonna get ready to put that into our old fashioned. So again, in case you're still catching up, I just did 1/4 cup of warm water and I whisked that with 1/4 cup of honey together in this bowl. And we're gonna use this in our honey old fashioned, right? Super duper simple. All right, so let's make the actual drink. So this is a drink that you can make directly in the glass. Sometimes old fashions are made in mixing glasses, things that look like this. I'm gonna use mine just because I like it. I love the design. But again, you can make yours directly in your glass. So the first thing I'm gonna do is add ice to my mixing glass. So it doesn't have to be a ton, but just enough to kind of cool down the drink. So once I have my ice in my mixing glass or my cocktail glass, the glass that I'm going to drink out of, I'm going to start to add my ingredients. So the first thing you want to do is grab a measuring spoon, whatever it is that you're going to use to actually measure your drink ingredients, and measure out 1/4 of an ounce of honey syrup, which is the equivalent of half of a tablespoon. So I'm going to go in with 1/4 of an ounce or half a tablespoon of honey syrup, which we just made. And then I'm just going to pour it directly into my mixing glass. All right. So once I have my 1/4 of an ounce or half a tablespoon of honey syrup, I'm going to add 2 ounces of whiskey. So I'm going in with 2 ounces of whiskey. I'm going to use my jigger to measure. If you're using tablespoons, that would be about 4 tablespoons or 1/4 of a cup. So 2 ounces, 4 tablespoons, or 1/4 of a cup, it's all the same. We're gonna add that amount of whiskey to our mixing glass right on top of that honey syrup. All right. So far we have our honey syrup and we have our whiskey. So our last ingredients are gonna be the bitters. So this is the bitters that I'm using. It's the Angostura aromatic bitters. One thing I want to mention before you add this to your drink, I think a lot of times people tend to just dribble their bitters on the side, but we actually are going to dash 3 times. And a dash is actually when you turn it completely upside down. Up and down is 1 dash. So we're going to do that 3 times. So go ahead and open up your bitters bottle. Mine is a little bit tight. And then we're gonna add 3 dashes. So up and down is 1 dash. So 1, 2, 3. All right. So just a quick recap in case you're still catching up. So far, we've added ice to our glass. We've added 1/4 of an ounce of honey syrup, which is the same as 1/2 of a tablespoon. We added 2 ounces of whiskey, which is 4 tablespoons. And then we just added 3 dashes of aromatic bitters. All right. So once we have those ingredients, the next thing we're going to do is mix it all together and chill it down. So what you want to do is grab a bar spoon, a regular spoon is also fine. Even a butter knife will work really well. And what you want to do is just mix it together for about 20 or so, 15 to 20 seconds. You just want to keep stirring it because what's going to happen is the water from the ice is actually going to melt down a little bit and get some of that alcohol taste out and dilute the alcohol just slightly while also chilling down the drink. So again, this is something you can do directly in the glass that you're going to drink from, but I'm just using a mixing glass because I have it. All right, so that looks pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do, since I did mine in the mixing glass, is grab my drinking glass. I'm going to add some ice to it, just a little bit of ice, since it's already pretty chilled. And then I'm going to grab my strainer and then strain the liquid from my mixing glass into my cocktail glass that I'm going to drink from. All right. Okay. So now our last step, which is my favorite step, is actually the garnish, which is an orange peel. So most old fashions, depending on what kind they are, if they're classic or not, tend to be garnished with an orange peel. So what you want to do is grab your orange and take either a small knife or like a vegetable peeler and just peel a little bit of the orange peel off and hold on to that. So I'll show you how big it should be. If you are using a knife, I'd be really careful. That's why I tend to use the peeler. I feel like it's a little bit easier to control. But I'm just gonna peel off just a little piece of the orange peel. About this size should be good, right? Not too big, not too small. So I just use my peeler, peeled some of that off of my orange. And then what I'm gonna do is actually fold it in half and express the citrus oils onto my drink. So I'm gonna fold it in half and then rub the orange peel all around my cocktail glass and then take the peel and just drop it inside the glass. And your hands will start to smell really good, like orange oil. Basically what we just did was express the oil so that every time you take a sip, you're actually gonna be smelling and tasting a little bit of that citrus in addition to the cocktail. So it tastes really, really good. And that is our honey old fashioned. So cheers, everybody. I hope yours looks and tastes great. And also, I would love to see your creation since I can't really see you guys on camera. So if you are making the drinks with me, I would love if you took pictures, put it on Instagram and tag me. I am at the Cocktail Snob _ on Instagram. Would love to see your creations up close and personal. All right, cheers. So while you guys are enjoying that, we're actually gonna do a little bit of trivia. So you can have a chance to sip on your creation and enjoy your drink. So it's all fun. They're gonna come up on your screen. They're popping up right now in the form of a poll. So I'll read the first one. Just take your best guess and I will reveal the answer. So first question, according to Drinks International, what is the most popular cocktail in the world? Is it the daiquiri, the whiskey sour, the martini, or the old fashioned? So please, please, please take your best guess. I would love for you to all cast your votes, and then I will reveal the answer shortly. This one is a little bit tricky. I can't lie, but I think it's a fun one. And I heard the more like old-fashioned sips you take, the more likely that you'll get this one right. All right, let's see the answers. For some reason, I'm not seeing the results, but if you guess old-fashioned, You are correct. So the old fashioned is the most popular cocktail in the world, according to Drinks International. That surprised me too. I could have sworn it would have been the martini, but it is the old fashioned, probably because it's so simple. It's just three easy ingredients that are so accessible. But the old fashioned is the most popular cocktail in the world. All right, so we're gonna go on to our next question, which will be popping up on your screen in just a second. Um, so another popularity question. What is the most popular spirit in the US? Is it rum, whiskey, vodka, or tequila? All right, take your best guess. Maybe something that you like to drink in college. I don't know. I know I have a favorite. My favorite is rum, but that doesn't necessarily make it the most popular. All right. Hopefully you guys have taken your guesses. Let's go ahead and see the answers. All right, yep, the correct answer is vodka. So if you guessed vodka, you got it right. This is no surprise to me because I feel like it's so affordable. There's vodka at every price point. All right, let's go on to the next question, and then we're gonna get into our last cocktail, our second cocktail for the evening. All right, so what is Mexico's most popular tequila-based cocktail? Is it the Paloma, the Margarita, the Cuba Libre, or the Bloody Maria? So what is Mexico's most popular tequila-based cocktail? Is it the Paloma, the Margarita, the Cuba Libre, or the Bloody Maria? Take your best guess. All right, let's see the answers. And the answer is the Paloma. So if you guessed Margarita, unfortunately, that is not correct. The Paloma is the most popular cocktail in Mexico. That's tequila based. If you've never had a Paloma, it's actually very good. It's just grapefruit soda mixed with tequila, sometimes a squeeze of lime. It's really, really delicious and super duper easy to make. All right, thank you guys so much. We are gonna go into our second cocktail, which is our our honey whiskey smash, which can be made with bourbon. So for this cocktail, you're gonna need blackberries. We're gonna use the honey syrup that we just made. We're gonna use lemon juice, whiskey again, and then hopefully you have a whole lemon. So we're gonna use that as our garnish. So I'll just run through the ingredients one more time. You're gonna need your blackberries, you're gonna need your honey syrup, lemon juice, whiskey, and then a whole lemon for our garnish. In addition, you're gonna need a couple of tools. So this is actually a cocktail that we're going to be shaking together. So you're gonna need a cocktail shaker or something that will hold your liquid, your ice, something that you can shake with that's not gonna make a mess. You're gonna need a muddler because we're gonna be muddling the juice from the blackberries. And then you're gonna need something to measure your ingredients with as well, like a jigger or measuring spoon. All right, so let's make it. So we're gonna grab our cocktail shaker, and the first thing we're gonna do is add our blackberries to the shaker. So I'm gonna take about 5 blackberries, 4 to 5 is fine, and just drop them directly into the shaker. So I have like a handful of my berries, and I'm just gonna drop them in there. The thing that I love about this recipe in particular is that you can pretty much use any berry that you have on hand. So strawberries, blueberries, they all will work with this. So if you happen to like not be able to find blackberries at your supermarket, any berry that you find will work really well. A handful is like plenty. Okay, so we have about 5 blackberries in our shaker. And what we're gonna do next is add our honey syrup. So we're gonna do 1 ounce of honey syrup, which is the equivalent of about 2 tablespoons. So 1 ounce or 2 tablespoons of honey syrup. And then I'm just gonna add that directly to the shaker right on top of those blackberries. All right, so we have our blackberries, we have 1 ounce of honey syrup. And then what we're gonna do is grab a muddler, which is a tool that typically looks like this. If you don't have a muddler, you can actually use like the back of a wooden spoon, just anything that has a blunt edge that's gonna help you juice the blackberries. All right. So we're gonna grab our muddler or whatever tool, whatever tool you have on hand, and then just press down to get as much juice out of the blackberries as possible. Shouldn't be too hard because we don't have that many in there. This is also a recipe that if you have mint and you like mint, works really, really well. But I decided to skip the mint this time. We're just gonna do it with our blackberries and it will taste just as great. So once you've juiced the blackberries with your muddler, we're gonna go in and add the rest of our cocktail ingredients. So next thing we're gonna do is add our lemon juice. So we're gonna need 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. So I'm gonna measure out 3/4 of an ounce, which is the same as a tablespoon and a half. So 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, just add it right on top of the blackberries and the honey. I always recommend fresh citrus juice if you can. The reason I say that is because sometimes when you are shopping, like the supermarket versions of like lemon juice, lime juice, they oftentimes have sweeteners in them to kind of help keep it shelf stable and all these other additives, which kind of throw the drink off balance. I understand not everybody loves to juice lemons and limes by hand, but if you have the energy and the time, I highly recommend using fresh citrus in your cocktails. It makes such a difference in the taste. Okay, so far we have our blackberries, we have our honey syrup, and our lemon juice. So now we're gonna add our whiskey. So we're gonna add 2 ounces of whiskey again, which is the same as 4 tablespoons or 1/4 of a cup. So I'm gonna measure out my 2 ounces, 4 tablespoons or 1/4 of a cup of whiskey, and add it on top of everything that's already there. All right, so quick recap of ingredients. We muddled together 5 blackberries with an ounce of honey syrup. We added 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, and then we added 2 ounces of whiskey. So now we're gonna add our ice to our cocktail shaker. You don't need a ton of ice, but I would say maybe like half a cup or so is good. All right, and then we're going to cover the shaker, make sure it's sealed up nice and tight, and then we're gonna shake it for about 10 seconds because we want to make sure that everything is getting combined really well and that it's chilling down the drink so that it can be at its optimal temperature. So when you're shaking, a good rule of thumb, it's a good shake when you are making the ice hit both the bottom and the top of the shaker. So let's go ahead and shake for about 10 seconds. All right. So your hands will feel a little bit chilly. That's how you know it's ready. And at this point, you actually have a couple of options with how you can serve this cocktail. So grab your glass. So it's up to you if you would like a cleaner sip. Like, for example, let's say you don't want to have the blackberry seeds and the skin and all of that floating around in your drink. What I would do is actually add fresh ice to your glass, whatever glass you're going to drink out of, and then strain just the liquid on top of that ice. So that way you can block the blackberry seeds and skin and all of that from coming out. If you don't mind having some of that kind of floating around in your drink, you can do what's called a dirty dump, which I'm gonna do, and just pour everything from your cocktail shaker, ice included, into your glass. I'm just gonna add a little bit more ice to my glass, because this is a bigger glass, but I'm gonna do the dirty dump so that I can have all of the seeds and everything just kind of floating nice and pretty in my glass. There we go. And then our final step is our garnish, because I like to make my cocktails as pretty as possible. So I'm grabbing the lemon that I have, just a whole lemon, and I'm just gonna cut a slice of it, like a lemon wheel, to add to the side of my drink. So just a plain lemon, just cutting like a regular slice, about this big, right? Not too complicated. And then it's helpful if you cut like a little slit on the side so it has something to hang from. And then you just stick it on the side of your glass. And that is our honey whiskey smash. Here's everybody. It's a really, really nice color, especially for the holidays and this time of year. So hopefully that one tastes good. That's also a really great one if you have friends or loved ones who don't drink. You actually can replace the whiskey with sparkling water or like a flavored sparkling water. It goes really, really well as a mocktail. So if you have folks who aren't drinkers or just you don't feel like having alcohol, you can definitely use that for a mocktail. You just add 2 ounces of sparkling water instead of whiskey. So that's a cool trick. All right, so it is time for another round of trivia before we get into our final cocktail of the evening. So we're gonna go again with 3 questions. Take your best guess. I will guide you through. Our first question is about the margarita, one of my favorite cocktails. What are the 3 ingredients that were used to create the original margarita? Is it tequila, salt, and lime juice, tequila, lime juice, and agave, tequila, orange liqueur, and lime juice, or tequila, soda, and orange liqueur? Please take your best guess. This one I think is a little difficult, but try your best. I'm here for you. Don't worry. So the 3 ingredients that were used to create the original margarita. I'll give you a second because this one is there's a lot of choices here. All right, let's see the answers. Let's see how you did. Yes, so if you said tequila, orange liqueur, and lime juice, you are correct. The original margarita was actually made with tequila, Cointreau, and lime juice, which is an orange liqueur. And if you have a bottle of Cointreau, if you look on the back of it, their claim to fame is that they were a part of the original margarita. So the recipe is actually there, which is kind of cool. All right, our next question. Let's see. The word vodka is derived from a Slavic word that translates to what? Is it water, life, liquor, or spirit? So vodka is a Slavic word that translates to what word in English? Is it water, life, liquor, or spirit? All right, take your best guess. This is a fun one. All right, let's see the answers. Yes, the correct answer is water, which I think is fun because, doctors say you should have a lot of water in your diet. So, depending on how you want to interpret that, vodka, water, I don't know. I'm putting something together there. All right, let's go to our last question, and then we're going to get into our final cocktail. This one is about whiskey. Which brand of whiskey was created to honor the legacy of Nathan Green, the slave who taught Jack Daniel how to make whiskey? Is it Four Roses, Maker's Mark, Basil Hayden, or Uncle Nearest? I'll read that one more time. Which brand of whiskey was created to honor the legacy of Nathan Green, the slave who taught Jack Daniel how to make whiskey? Is it Four Roses, Maker's Mark, Basil Hayden, or Uncle Nearest? This one is a tough one. If you're a history buff, you might know this. But this brand of whiskey actually came out, I think, around 3 or 4 years ago. It has been, I think, the fastest growing whiskey brand in US history. So let's see what you picked. Yes, so the correct answer is Uncle Nearest. So it's a really, really great brand. It was founded by Fawn Weaver, who discovered the story of Nathan Green, who's also, his nickname was Uncle Nearest, and decided that she wanted to tell his story and really honor his legacy. So they have really been doing a great job because all of his family is involved in the distillery and the brand and the whiskey making. So it's a really, really cool story. If you're not familiar, I definitely encourage you to look it up because it's really cool. All right, so we are going to get into our final cocktail together before we get into Q&A. And it is a really, really fun one. It's a white chocolate peppermint martini, which I think is a really great holiday cocktail. So this one has a lot of ingredients, but trust me, it is worth it. So I will give you a rundown really quickly. We're going to be using honey, and candy canes. That's just gonna be for the rim of our glass. We're gonna be using white chocolate liqueur, vanilla vodka. If you have regular vodka, that's okay too. We're gonna use creme de cacao, half and half, and then peppermint schnapps. So I'll run through that one more time because that is a long list of ingredients. We're gonna use honey, candy canes, white chocolate liqueur, vodka. Vanilla vodka is great, but if you don't have that, regular vodka works as well. We're gonna use creme de cacao, half and half, and peppermint schnapps. So hopefully you were able to find all those ingredients. Most liquor stores do have them, even though they sound like they're really like specialized. They're actually usually pretty widely available. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is actually rim our glass. So this is where the candy canes and the honey are gonna come in. So I already went ahead and crushed my candy canes. So I encourage you to do that. It makes a lot of noise, so I wanted to spare you guys that experience. But basically you can take your candy canes and just crush them up. If you want, you can use the muddler that we used for that last cocktail, the back of a wooden spoon, whatever you need to kind of get your candy cane into kind of like a crumb form, right? Because we're gonna put that all around our rim. All right, so while you're doing that, I'll also talk about our honey. So we're not gonna use the honey syrup, we're gonna use actual honey this time. We need something strong for the candy cane to adhere to. So I'm just gonna pour out just like a little bit, like maybe a tablespoon or a tablespoon and a half of honey onto another plate so we can have something to dip our glass in. All right, so far all we need are 2 plates, one with about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of honey, and then just some crushed up candy canes, as small as possible. All right, so once you have those 2 things, what you wanna do is grab the glass that you're gonna serve the chocolate martini in, or you're gonna drink from. Grab that glass, and then you wanna dip the rim of it into the honey. If you want, you can also use your fingers to kind of spread the honey around the rim, whatever you prefer. It does get a little bit messy with your fingers. That's why I put mine in a plate. But I'm just gonna go all around the rim of my glass, spreading the honey around, right? Because we need something for our candy cane to stick to. Hopefully, hopefully this will be strong enough. I'm just gonna go over it one more time, just in case. But your glass will look something like this. I don't know if you can see that once it's actually coated with the honey. So once you have the honey on the rim, you're gonna take your same glass and just dip it upside down in the plate that has the candy canes crushed up, and just sort of like swirl it around. Try to get as much coverage on the rim as you possibly can. Try to get it to stick to the honey. My candy canes are actually sticking to my plate, but I'm making it work. And this is also a step that if you want to, you can skip. But I think it does add like that extra holiday element, and it's like a nice pepperminty fresh taste every time you take a sip of your drink. All right. So you could also use frosting for this if you wanted to instead of honey, but I think the honey works well since you used it for the other cocktail. So it'll look something like that with your candy canes on the rim. All right, so once you have your glass rimmed with your honey and your candy canes, you're actually gonna set it to the side. So this is a cocktail that we're going to be making in our shaker. And I'm just rinsing out all of that blackberry seed from our last cocktail. All right, so now we're gonna make the actual drink. So first thing we're gonna do is grab our jigger, and we're gonna measure out 1.5 ounces of our white chocolate liqueur, which is the same as 3 tablespoons. All right, so white chocolate liqueur, 1.5 ounces or 3 tablespoons. We're just gonna add that directly to our shaker. All right. Next ingredient, because we have a lot, next ingredient is gonna be our vanilla vodka or regular vodka, if that's what you're using. Same thing, we're gonna do 1.5 ounces of that or 3 tablespoons. We're gonna add that right on top of our white chocolate liqueur. So 1.5 ounces, 3 tablespoons of vanilla vodka or regular vodka. And then we're gonna take our creme de cacao and add an ounce of that. This one. So we're gonna do an ounce of the creme de cacao, which is basically just like a chocolate liqueur. It tastes really, really good in lots of cocktails, and it really brings out the chocolate flavor in this one. All right. So we did 1 ounce or 2 tablespoons of the creme de cacao. And then we're gonna do an ounce of half and half, which is the same as 2 tablespoons. So go ahead and get your half and half, measure out 1 ounce or 2 tablespoons, and add that directly to your shaker as well. And then our final ingredient is the peppermint schnapps. So we're gonna go in with half an ounce of peppermint schnapps, which is 1 tablespoon. So just a half an ounce of this one. We just want a little bit of minty flavor, not too much. All right, so I'm gonna do a quick recap of the ingredients because there are quite a lot of them, just in case you missed any of the steps. So after we rimmed our glass, we grabbed our shaker, we added 1.5 ounces of our white chocolate liqueur, which is 3 tablespoons. We did 1.5 ounces of vanilla vodka or regular vodka, 3 tablespoons. And then we did 1 ounce of creme de cacao, which is 2 tablespoons. We did 1 ounce of half and half, which is 2 tablespoons. And then 1/2 ounce of peppermint schnapps, which is 1 tablespoon. All right. So once we have all of those ingredients, we are going to add our ice. So I'm just gonna add some ice in there. We have a lot of different textures and liquids going on. So I'm gonna add quite a bit of ice. And then we're gonna seal it up and shake again for 10 seconds, making sure that the ice hits both the bottom and the top of our shaker, because we want to make sure everything gets combined really well, especially in a cocktail like this, where we have so many different ingredients and so many different like textures and volumes going on. All right, so let's go ahead and shake for 10 seconds. All right. So now we're gonna grab our glass that we prepared with our candy canes. Some of mine are sliding off. That's okay if that's happening to you too. And then what we're gonna do is actually strain the liquid into a glass, because a martini is not served with ice. So you wanna make sure that you're not getting any ice in your glass. Most cocktail shakers actually have a strainer built in. So at the top, you'll see like a strainer with some holes. So you can just use that. If you don't have a cocktail shaker, you can also just use like a strainer from your kitchen, or just something that's gonna help you block the ice from coming out. Whatever works best, use it so you can get that ice out of there. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour my cocktail into my glass. All right, looks so good. And there it is. That is our white chocolate peppermint martini. So you can see that. This is a really, really great one for the holidays. And one tip I also want to mention is that whenever you're making cocktails, especially if you're making something for the first time, I highly recommend leaving the alcohol as sort of like the last step if you can. For this cocktail, most of the ingredients are alcohol, so that's a little bit harder. But if you can, use alcohol last, because if you are making something and you accidentally mess up, you add too much lime juice, too much lemon juice, nobody minds if you kind of like pour that down the drain and start over. But if you would have started with your whiskey or your tequila, it's kind of hard to throw that down the drain. So I always recommend adding all the other ingredients first and the alcohol last, so that way you can kind of like save yourself a little heartache in case you make a mistake. And one other thing I will say about this cocktail, it is very pretty, it's very tasty, but it is about 95% liquor, so it is very strong. So I know we probably want to like just kind of slurp it down. I would drink it very slowly because it's one of those ones that could easily sneak up on you. But I hope you enjoy. All right. Thank you all so much. This has been so great. I'm excited to hear your questions.
Thank you, Camille. This has been so fun to watch. I feel like I'm gonna be super impressive on Thursday. I think I'm gonna try the honey blackberry. I'm
Oh, good.
excited.
Yes, that's a good
Okay,
one.
so let's jump into some questions. So first up is Laura. She says she loves old fashioned. Is there a particular brand of bourbon that harmonizes well with the strong flavor of honey?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm partial to Basil Hayden's. I really, really like their bourbon. But honestly, you can't go wrong because I feel like with whiskey, especially if it's bourbon, I feel like it kind of holds up because you're not using that much honey. We only do about a quarter of an ounce. So I feel like you really can't go wrong, but I personally really love Basil Hayden's. That's my favorite to use in an old fashioned.
Okay, all right. And Cindy would like tips on modifying drinks to become mocktails, as some guests are limited on alcohol consumption.
Yes, that is a great question. My book, Free Spirit, is actually a collection of 40 non-alcoholic recipes. So this is right up my alley. So I'll be honest, not every cocktail is easily like translatable to a mocktail. Like the drink that we just made, I don't really think that would work in as a mocktail because so much of the ingredients are alcohol. But the honey whiskey, the smash that we made with the blackberries, like I mentioned, that one is great if you replace the whiskey with sparkling water. That's a really great substitution. Often in a lot of cocktail recipes, sparkling water, seltzer, tonic water can be used instead of alcohol. If you are into like experimenting, I would also recommend there are such things as alcohol-free spirits. So these are spirits that sort of have the taste and texture of alcohol, but they don't actually have any alcohol in them. So Ritual is a brand that I really love. They have a whiskey alternative, tequila alternative, I think vodka as well, a rum as alternative. There are a few companies like that that offer those like alcohol-free spirits. So that is something to try if you're like limited and you don't want to consume a lot of alcohol, but you still want like the taste and texture. That's another way to kind of like create mocktails that taste like cocktails.
I think that would be a really sweet thing to know if you don't drink and you show up to an event and they have whiskey, if they have alcohol-free spirits. That's really nice.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Susan asked, would maple syrup work in the old fashioned instead of honey?
Yes, absolutely, definitely. Honestly, so the classical fashion has simple syrup, and I would say like almost any sweetener will work. You may have to play around with the ratios a little bit because some sweeteners tend to be like sweeter than others. But things like agave, maple syrup, cinnamon syrup, like there's so many sweeteners. I say just try it out and see if you like it.
Okay, and then PM asked, is there a difference in the kind of honey that you use? Some are fruity, some are floral. Does it matter?
For me, no. I used a clover honey for this one, but I just kind of use whatever I have available. The taste might change slightly, so it's one of those things where you can sort of make it with a few different ones and see which one you like best. But I don't think you can go wrong, regardless of the type of honey that you choose.
Okay. We have a few questions about bitters from Teresa, Elaine, and Pat. So I'm going to give them to you all at once.
Okay.
How long do bitters last? Are
Oh.
there any that can be used beside Angostura? And
Mhm.
what is the taste that comes with bitters? Like, just what are they?
Yes, these are great questions. So bitters, this is just one brand, one kind of bitter, but bitters are basically, I like to describe them as like the salt and pepper, or like the seasoning for a cocktail, because they add an additional layer of flavor without you having to add like another sweetener or another liqueur or something to make it even heavier. They are very potent. They typically have, for example, about 50% alcohol in them. That's why we only use a few dashes at a time. But like I that they're sort of like the seasoning to a cocktail and add like some extra flavor, some complex flavors without adding like a whole other alcohol or sweetener. There are lots of brands of bitters. So Angostura Aromatic, I think, are probably the most popular, most widely accessible, but there are a ton of other ones. Scrappy's Bitters is a great brand. They have so many flavors. They have celery, they have cherry, they have chocolate bitters. There's orange bitters. There's so many flavors of bitters. It was even like a cola, like Coca-Cola bitters. So there are lots of different flavors. And what was the other question? I think I answered them, but please.
Expiration.
Oh, expiration. I think they last kind of forever, because they have so much alcohol in them. Probably after a year or two, they might start to lose their flavor just a little bit, but honestly, they last forever. Like I use mine often because I teach a lot of classes and things, but they last a really long time. But I would say after 2 years, you might want to like replace your bottle of bitters. Thank you.
Okay, and this is my own question. Are all bitters actually like bitter? Like if you were to taste it by itself, is it bitter?
Yeah, they are. They do taste bitter because they're so potent. They're basically made out of like alcohol, botanicals, herbs, all kinds of different things. And they do taste bitter on their own. But when you add them to a cocktail, they kind of like brighten up a bit and they mix with the other flavors in there to bring out more complexity.
Okay, okay. And now we're on to a couple whiskey questions. PM asks, does the whiskey matter? Rye, bourbon, Irish, Scotch?
Yeah, the thing is, I'm all about like kind of throwing out the rules in a way and using what you like. A lot of people will say like bourbon and rye are best for old fashioned, but I will say use what you have on hand, and use what you like. So the recommendation is like rye, bourbon, those tend to be the best, but try it with everything. Whatever you have on hand is fine. That's what I say. You could even do rum in an old fashioned, honestly. Like any like aged spirit works very well in an old fashioned.
Okay, and Daphne asks if you have a particular favorite brand of whiskey.
Of whiskey. Basil Hayden's I love. I can name a couple others. Uncle Nearest is really great. Like it's a very, very good whiskey. I also like Maker's Mark as well. And trying to think of one that's maybe not like as well known to give you something to try. Um, there's a new whiskey, I think it's called Oak and Honey, that I just tried for the first time. That's really good. It's actually like has honey in it, and it comes with like a little piece of like oak, because their whole claim to fame is that they finished aging the whiskey in the bottle, which I think is very unique. So that's one that I like as well.
That sounds really fun. That's
Yeah,
like
it's different.
those bottles of tequila you always see in the movie that have the worm in the bottom.
Yeah. It's like that, but whiskey. Yeah.
Okay, and Brian asks, when adding the ingredients to the shaker, is it important to add the liquor too, or can I leave the liquor in the glass with the ice and then shake the ingredients after? Add the shaker ingredients to the glass of alcohol.
Oh, I would recommend adding everything to the shaker, because if you shake some ingredients and then add them on top, things are not going to be blended well. Also, with when you shake, you're doing it with ice, because you want the ice to dilute a little bit and dilute the alcohol. So if you're leaving the alcohol out, it's not really getting diluted, and I don't think it's going to be as balanced as we would want it to be. So I would add everything to the shaker.
All right, sounds good. Rita asks, if you don't have vanilla vodka, could you use a small amount of vanilla extract in with regular vodka to get the same effect?
Oh, that is a good question. I haven't thought about that, but I think you could. But vanilla extract is so potent. I would be really, really careful. Like maybe try like a half a teaspoon at most, just so you're not overpowering the drink with the vanilla. That's what I would recommend if you don't have vanilla vodka.
Okay. And bar mint instead of peppermint schnapps in the peppermint martini.
Yes.
Is there a difference?
No, they're essentially the same thing. They're both mint tea liqueurs. So liqueurs are just really strong and sweetened, like flavored alcohols. And creme de menthe is something that I just have on hand, probably from making this drink. But they essentially
Okay.
taste exactly the
And
same.
it looks like this is our last question. Laura asks, what's your favorite spirit for eggnog?
Oh my. It is eggnog season. My favorite spirit for eggnog, it's kind of a tie between rum and whiskey. I'm a rum person. My family's Caribbean, so I didn't grow up drinking rum, but I've always been around rum, so I love it. But I think whiskey or like bourbon goes really well in eggnog as well. And I think it's Southern Comfort that makes like an eggnog that has like their bourbon in it too, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I don't think I've seen non-alcoholic eggnog, but I've never like made it alcoholic myself. I've always just like had
Yeah,
yes.
I've never made it. I just buy it, honestly.
Okay. Well, I think that was the last question. Oh, one more. Um S. Damron, I think, is doing a Christmas ladies brunch. What would be a good holiday drink
Ooh.
in a pitcher? Ooh, I like this question.
Oh, I love this question. Okay, this is my specialty. Hosting, entertaining. I'll give you two. One that I love, especially for brunch, is like an apple cider mimosa. So it's just like, and it's to taste. So it's however you want it. You could do half apple cider, half sparkling wine, or maybe you want mostly sparkling wine and a little bit of apple cider, totally up to you. The thing I love about it is like when you serve it, you could do like a cinnamon sugar on the rim, which is like a really fun like little treat as you're sipping. Another great cocktail for like in a batch form is a daiquiri. Daiquiri is like my favorite cocktail of all time. It's just rum, lime juice, and simple syrup, which is basically just sugar. So that one is easy because it's only 3 ingredients, and it's 2 parts rum, 1 part sugar, and 1 part lime. So if you're doing like a big pitcher, it could be like 2 cups of rum, 1 cup of simple syrup, and 1 cup of lime juice. Super easy.
Awesome. Okay, I think that is actually all of the questions. Camille, thank you so much for joining us. It has been so fun. I can't wait to try these. I have a little bit of information to share with you all before we head out. So clearly, we all want to keep up with Camille. So you can head to the cocktailsnobnyc.com and purchase Camille's book from there. She's also at the Cocktail Snob _ on Instagram. So if you need some more party and entertaining inspo, you can find it there. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you so much, Camille, for your time and for sharing these fun recipes with us. Here's a sneak peek of our Black Friday sale. Use this code to get 50% off a 6-month subscription. We'll leave a link in the chat if you'd like to start your own group. You clearly have some entertaining cocktails to get you started. And Meetup is on TikTok. And I think I'll show it to you. There we go. Meetup is on TikTok. Check it out and follow us at Meetup. We post really fun and engaging content that you don't want to miss out on. As a reminder, you can view a recap of this event in a few days on our Community Matters blog at meetup.com/blog. Thank you guys all for joining us. Stay safe and have a wonderful holiday. Bye.